make more good in the all-new Sportage X-Pro. Kia, movement that inspires.
Quaker Steak and Lube is throwing open the garage doors and setting up the umbrellas. It's patio season. Come enjoy great food, drinks, and fun in the sun. There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube, but we're really amping up our event calendars for our favorite time of year. Visit thelube.com to find out what's happening at your local Lube this season. Lunch, happy hour, dinner, or late night, indoors or outside, at Quaker Steak and Lube, you'll always find big flavors, friendly faces, and lots of fun.
New Trail Brewing Company proudly crafts their beers right here in central Pennsylvania. Brewed with only the best possible ingredients, New Trail produces a variety of year-round brands as well as weekly experimental recipes. New Trail Broken Heels is Pennsylvania's favorite local hazy IPA. This beer is smooth and full-bodied. Hand-selected Citra hops lead to notes of bright clementine and juicy ruby red grapefruit. Broken Heels is perfect for a pregame tailgate all the way through the victory celebration.
What's the best mid-size pickup? Tacoma. What's the #1 mid-size truck in resale value? Tacoma. Want to get great gas mileage, 4 doors, and 4-wheel drive? Tacoma. Sioka Toyota of Williamsport has over 25 available right now. You can lease a brand new, never-driven Toyota Tacoma for just $379 a month. That's 30 months, 3,000 cash or trade, 10,000 miles a year. This is while supplies last. Buy yours or reserve yours today and see the Sioka difference. And remember, tell them Johnny sent you.
And we welcome you in to another edition of the Goonless, Goon and Ironhead show on a Tuesday afternoon here in the Valley of Happiness. Chris Buchanani kind enough to fill in for the ailing Dear Goon.
Yeah, so Goon and I were doing the players show last night at Champs, and Goon was already feeling this coming on. He got hit with that, the weather changes and that November cold. If you've lived in central Pennsylvania, you know it. And he was saying, he's like, I can feel it coming on. I was like, stay away from me. And for the love of God, stay away from Juice Scruggs. But, good news is everybody escaped that unscathed except the Goon himself. He is at home with the, the chicken soup and the ginger ale and the
50, you celebrate your 50th and you fall apart.
You
see what happens.
Yeah, indeed.
I know all too well, dear Goon, what is in store for you. Let's, start with Penn State, Indiana. I mean, largely, I think what was expected, including, maybe not getting off to an electric start in that atmosphere. But I think, a lot of good things to build on. And I don't know. A
lot of people worked up about the way that game started. I don't know. I wasn't worried about that at all. Like, how many times have you seen a crappy team, especially one playing at home? They just come out and totally empty the chamber in the first quarter, and then that's it. They're done. They're spent.
Yeah, and I think also, Penn State, I don't know. I felt comfortable the whole time that I didn't necessarily see 45-14 coming, but I thought it was going to be a comfortable win at the end of the day, even after the first quarter.
Yeah, same.
Just because with that atmosphere, I think it to me is very understandable that it takes a little while to get going. You're having to create your own energy and kind of figure some things out. And
lousy weather.
And I just think. I don't know. Mission accomplished. On to the next game. I think this is a big one. Not only, but for me, primarily because of the history here with Maryland, and I do think there's rightfully some hard feelings, certainly from the Penn State side.
Rumor has it the tape was played for the team.
Yeah, and I think that it should be, and
I do too.
I think that's
I do too.
Again, that's just one of those things that should stick with you for a while. And I think for Penn State, obviously, this is a really important now 3-game stretch, 4-game stretch coming off of the Ohio State loss, just to me, continue the good vibes surrounding the program.
I think it's critical.
Yeah, and listen, again, I don't it's so funny how quickly perceptions can change. to me, this team, if it gets to 10-2 in the regular season and then does get to a New Year's Day bowl game and wins that, I mean, it is impossible to chalk this up as anything but a successful season given the expectations.
Big time.
At the start of the year. And I think it does give you a lot of reason, if they are able to take care of business here down the stretch, for optimism about what can come. Now, for me, I am jaded enough that after the Michigan game this year, they can win all of the games up to Michigan and Ohio State next year. And until I see them do it against them, I'm not going to be going crazy with how good I think that team can be. But listen, Drew Aller's a pretty good place to start. And I think getting, the experience that he has had this year, and the one thing I wish they would have done, and I know he ended up getting plenty of time and all of that, I wish they would get him in the first quarter or first half anyway.
When the outcome is in question.
Yeah, yes. And just get a series in there to let him get a feel for everything when the game, is still in the balance. And again, I'm not throwing Sean Clifford under the bus, but I mean, you know what you have there, and I think there's some very good things, but there are some things that obviously are concerning that, as a sixth-year senior now, you're still having some of the issues that are there. And I just think the upside, obviously, for Aller is through the roof. And I think, you're not doing anything to damage your chances of winning these final three games by getting him some experience, more experience in there. And I don't think it's any kind of huge slap in the face or anything to Sean Clifford. I'm fine with him starting. I'm fine with him getting, the majority of reps in the first half of these games, at least. But I just think you need to be getting Aller in there a little more and kind of start working toward the future, which I think is very bright. And again, I'm not saying you don't take care of business at hand. And I think certainly Maryland, really all three of these games are not gimmies because of the history involved and the emotions involved in the Maryland and Rutgers games. And because Michigan State, as usual, is just it is a Jekyll and Hyde.
I can think of a particular emotion that's going to be involved with the Rutgers game. Is any kind of of an issue? But Maryland is 6-3. They're kind of a confusing team, as they have been pretty much most of Mike Loxley's tenure, and I think it's largely because he has done a pretty good job improving results, recruiting at the skill positions. Has not been able to duplicate that in the trenches. And top to bottom, they're just not as talented a team as the ones that they would like to try to be hanging with inside the division. So, I take Maryland very seriously. I take Michigan State very seriously. If you can't beat Rutgers this year, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not, other than to the extent you have to take every opponent quasi seriously, I'm not worried about Rutgers. But this is a team, especially with Talia Tagovailoa, who you have to respect because of his dual threat ability because of the softness Penn State has shown in the middle of the field, the front seven. You're a little concerned there.
Yeah, and so listen, I mean, I think Penn State obviously should be able to take care of business these final three, but it needs to. It needs to to finish up strongly and to, again, get some momentum going into next season. But I do think, again, with Aller and then with the running backs and Abdul Carter on the defense, you've got a lot to build on from a talent standpoint for the next couple of years. And, obviously you have the expanded playoffs coming in a couple of years too, which is, I did think they were making some good points in the telecast on Saturday on, perception and having the expanded playoffs probably does benefit or would have benefited, and I think likely will benefit Penn State about as much as anyone. Probably a couple of teams in the SEC, not named Alabama, as well. But I mean, Penn State is if you had the expanded playoffs, right? I think the James Franklin picture would be different right now. Because you'd be talking about a team that is in the playoffs.
Yeah, sure.
Probably at least three times
to
this point, and probably would be in strong contention for a fourth playoff run this year. And that again changes just the dynamics of how you are perceived as a program. And so again, I think the future is bright. I like a lot of things about this season, this team. The Michigan game remains just a source of tremendous frustration, not just because they lost, but the way they just got absolutely bullied.
That's the key. The way they looked, the way they played. No doubt.
They rebounded, played a strong game as they usually do against Ohio State. And again, as you've pointed out earlier, if they do run the table here, one of the few times, debatably the only time in the Franklin era that other than, that they have won all of the games that as fans you're expecting that they win.
And don't forget, it's not just fans, although, fan support is important. There are other key stakeholder groups who James Franklin needs to make a strong closing argument with this season, recruits being one of them, boosters being another one, and quite frankly, the administration as well, because he now has a top Penn State, both in the president's office and in the new athletic director, people who have no investment in his hiring, right? So I think James has actually probably gotten a net benefit with the hiring of Neely and Pat Kraft, because I think both of them are going to be aligned with him on what Penn State needs to compete in modern college football in a way that their predecessors were not.
Yes.
But I also think the trade-off for that, for Coach Franklin, is
the
that
expectation.
The expectations and accountability are going to be a little bit different with people who are in no way tied to you. That's just kind of the way these things work in this world. So a lot of different groups who he wants to leave like a really strong closing argument for 2022 to springboard into next season. And I think the opportunity is right there. Like it's crazy what happened this weekend, Ironhead. Going into Saturday, I thought almost for sure Penn State needed to win out, and there was going to be a great chance that we'd all be heading to Miami for the Orange Bowl. That's the way everything was looking, and I thought, man, you're going to get a chance to play, Clemson or North Carolina. You're going to get a winnable game against a marquee opponent. And then November happened. LSU comes out and upsets Alabama, and now the Orange Bowl is almost certainly off the table.
Yeah.
But Sparty defeats Illinois, and now we're thinking there's a real serious shot Penn State could play in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about that just a little bit, because I know Michigan's non-conference schedule was not good, shall we say.
It was not. It was
not one of the strongest in the country. But we were just talking
still better than Washington's in 2016 when they got in over Penn State.
And so here's the thing. Well, I want to touch on one other thing just real quick, because I just – talking about perceptions and expectations. So I was, I think this came out on Sunday, maybe it was on Monday, but I read the article on ESPN, and the headline, I'm just like, wait a second, did I miss something? The headline is how Alabama football, Nick Saban, had their season fall apart. Fall apart. Now, when I think of a season falling apart, boys and girls, I think of Penn State last season.
Right.
Thinking that they're in the national title running going into the Iowa game, and through the first quarter of that Iowa game, thinking that they are very much on their way to that. And then, that is a season falling apart. Just so we're clear on what has happened
Alabama was about to finish 10-2 and go to New Year's Six Bowl, which we're talking about. I was like, man, what a great closing argument for James Franklin.
Are both road losses against teams that will be at the very least in contention, if not in the college football playoffs.
On the final play of the game.
Yes, we're down to the final play. And it was a terrific play by LSU to get the 2-point conversion. And Tennessee, I mean, it was one of those wild, fun shootout games. I mean
to be fair, the Penn State-Michigan game hinged on one play, too. It was just early in the first quarter.
This is true. But I mean, my gosh,
yeah, wow.
But that's the headline. How Alabama football, Nick Saban had their season fall apart. It just, I don't know. Sometimes I think a little perspective would be okay out there. But we were talking about this before we came on today with a couple folks here. When you are, and again, I get Michigan's non-conference schedule was awful. But for me, the eye test, and again, maybe I'm skewed a little bit because of what I saw Michigan do to Penn State, and I still think Penn State's a pretty good football team. Not an elite team, not a playoff team, but I think it's still a pretty good team.
I think you can arguably say, and not sound like a lunatic, that they're one of the top 12 teams in the country.
Yeah, I think if we had the expanded playoffs, if Penn State wins out, I think Penn State's in.
Yeah, maybe.
I do.
It's a technical point. There's always going to be one spot taken up by a group of 5 team. So the problem for Penn State would be the logjam of Pac-12 and SEC teams ahead of them.
Penn State wins out, I mean, we'll see what happens. But I think there's going to be enough teams in front there that are still going to haven't gone that in depth into the schedules. But I'm guessing there are some big games coming up still for some of the other teams.
And nobody thought LSU was knocking off Alabama.
Well, and so to that end, if that Michigan-Ohio State game is, a 38-37 thriller overtime game, right? And if the winner of that game, which presumably they will, goes on and crushes Illinois, whoever it is that is there in the Big Ten championship game, again, and other things are going to factor in here, but, I mean, the loser of that game – I mean, you're going to be telling me, I mean, I know Oregon has looked very good, but got trounced by Georgia. And I don't know, did Oregon have, and I mean, I'll give Oregon some credit, and I would if I was in the committee room too, for playing Georgia. So I get that that's part of it. Michigan didn't play a team anywhere near Georgia. So, I mean, you take all of that into account. But, I mean, Michigan, to me, if they lose by a point or two to Ohio State, I think, and I was watching, some of the coverage over the weekend. It's like, no, the loser of that game's out, especially if it's Michigan. And I'm like, I don't think that's definitive. I think it depends. If you're looking at it right now, I would probably agree that with TCU and Oregon and the resumes. But what happens if TCU doesn't come back in one of these remaining games this season? What if Oregon stumbles? And I don't even know what their schedule's like down the stretch here. But so there's a lot of things that can still play. I just don't think it's as automatic that Michigan or Ohio State, with a loss in that game is definitively out.
I don't think so. No, not at all. I don't think at all.
Again, if it is a competitive game and the other team, and listen, depending on what happens, I don't think, and everybody's like, Alabama's season is over. For the amount of respect that people have and earned respect, I'm not rolling Alabama out of this thing yet. A lot of things are going to happen. I'm not
crazier things have happened.
I'm not saying I'm predicting it, but I'm saying if Alabama wins out, I still think they're in contention because once you get past, I mean, if TCU and Oregon stumble, then, I mean, even a 2-loss Alabama, right? If you're comparing it with a 1-loss Michigan, and especially if it's a 1-loss Michigan that loses by a couple of touchdowns to Ohio State.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
And I don't know. It's all about conference perception, too. So, like, nobody in the country gets as much of a benefit of conference perception as the SEC, where if you have multiple top 15 teams in that conference and they beat each other, the narrative is, look at how deep the SEC is.
Right.
In the next couple of weeks, if the Big 12 and or the Pac-12 cannibalizes its top teams, then it's going to be, I knew it. Frauds. They're all frauds.
Right.
And that might not be inaccurate, especially in the case of the Pac-12, because the only outside data point you have on that conference, the only one worth anything until USC plays Notre Dame at least, is that Oregon-Georgia game. And then we're sort of projecting onto SC and UCLA that they're good teams because they've beaten up on other Pac-12 teams. It's just like, I don't know, guys.
Yeah, and one other just quick thing on just the kind of perception. It is interesting, right? Because LSU was written off by me, among many others, early. Texas A&M, I thought at the beginning of the season, I wasn't sure they were going to be a playoff contender. But, I mean, if
you didn't think they'd miss a bowl.
Yeah, I was pretty sure they were a top 20 type of team with Jimbo Fisher. I mean, I really did. I was buying in. Again, I don't know that I was necessarily buying the hype. I think they started at like 5 or 6.
They were
6,
I think, which was too high. But
but I mean, that did feel too high. But I also thought, hey, maybe they it didn't seem inconceivable that they could catch fire and get there.
If Penn State and A&M played on a neutral field today, Penn State would probably be favored by about 2.5 points, which is crazy. If you would have said that at the beginning of the season when they were top 6 and Penn State was unranked, right?
Well, and that's the thing. It just and Notre Dame was written off by me and others after the loss to Marshall, and you look at
don't forget Stanford
at the way that they're coming along. I mean, it's just you got to let the seasons play out, and and again, Oregon looked awful in that Georgia game, but looks like Georgia might be a pretty decent football team this season, and Oregon again has looked very good in every game since.
Did you believe in Tennessee coming into that game?
Oh, into the Georgia game.
Yeah.
They
would at least that they belonged on the field.
I thought they would. I thought their offense, as good as, and I knew Georgia's defense was really good. I just thought they were in such rhythm with their passing game. I did not think. I thought Georgia would cause some problems, and I thought the potential was there for some turnovers. But I thought Tennessee would automatically put up 24. Just showing up.
I thought Georgia was going to win. If I had to have guessed, just straight up, like no against a spread or anything, just who do you think is going to win the game? I would have picked Georgia.
I would have primarily because they were home.
Right.
I mean, that really.
Yeah, I was expecting a good game, and clearly all of America was too, because it was the highest rated college football game this past weekend, and it was terrible.
It was.
Tennessee just got run off the field.
And the
practically
LSU-Bama
from the jump
game, which many thought was not going to be competitive, ended up being probably the most entertaining game, at least that I watched over the weekend. And so, again, you just got to wait and see how it all plays out. A couple things just real quick I did want to make sure we hit on, too. Congratulations to Guy Godowski and the Penn State ice hockey program. Holy cow. I mean, what a win on Friday night. And that's another one where, okay, Penn State's undefeated, but how good are they really? Well, they're pretty good. I mean, they're pretty good. And it was a great comeback. I know they ended up falling in OT on Saturday, but that was a great in some ways, that was maybe a better effort or a more impressive result given the overall totality of the circumstances.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, Penn State had a 2-game series this weekend with Michigan, who was the number 1 ranked team in the country. They won 3-0 on Friday night, which was incredibly impressive. Then went down 3-0, came back and tied the game in the third period, and did lose in overtime, but not inconsequential to not just because of what you do in the game, but you also salvage the point out of that. So a big weekend for the Nittany Lions.
Could be huge before it's all said and done.
Yeah, and congratulations, Penn State. As a reward for beating number 1, you get to go on the road this weekend and play number 1 because now Minnesota is the new number 1 in the country.
And I suspect that they are chomping at the bit and happy that that's the way that lined up.
They are. They don't like us too much out there.
Yep, I don't think
because we ruined hockey. We ruined college hockey by creating a Big Ten ice hockey conference, which is now absolutely dominating the sport in the way that people said it could once it got going, right?
No question. I mean, you have probably at least 4, maybe 5 teams that, as you sit here right now, it's like, oh, I could see them winning the national title.
Yeah, like I appreciate old-timer traditional sports fans, especially in hockey. Yep. I love the profile of the hockey fan. You know what I'm talking about. Yep. So I actually do understand where the old timers who followed the sport forever and were attached to the very regional kind of idiosyncratic rivalries. I get where they're coming from. But as somebody who had no skin in that game, but who grew up a Penn State fan and, has like long since acclimated to being a Big Ten fan, I always saw the unbelievable potential to explode the sport of college hockey by creating a Big Ten ice hockey conference. And man, it has played out so far, COVID notwithstanding, a little bump in the road there over the course of a decade. It's built up and grown exactly the way you hoped that it would.
Yeah. And the rivalries are part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, congratulations again, and another big opportunity, and I suspect both teams will be geared up and ready to go this weekend for that series in Minneapolis. And congratulations to Erica Walsh and the Penn State women's soccer team as well, winning the Big Ten championship. And coming off a year in which Penn State did not win a Big Ten championship in its athletic department, that is not insignificant. And I don't think the women's soccer team will be the only Big Ten championship here in the 2022-2023 academic calendar year.
How about maybe a long-distance shooting fueled run through the Big Ten men's basketball tournament?
And listen, I do think, we've been talking about it, and
16 threes last night.
And I think Micah Shrewsbury has very quickly put together the type of team that he wanted to put together. And has some things working for him. The timing with the transfer portal and everything, it was good. But I think he just has such a clear vision of what he wants for the program and an ability to, I think for the first time, it feels like Penn State actually could be a regular contender in the Big Ten Conference. And I really, I truly think that is a distinct possibility here with Shrewsbury, because I think he understands the advantages that Penn State has and how he can use them to, recruit and I think Pat Chambers deserves a lot of credit for significantly upgrading the recruiting game.
Speaking of
Penn
congrats,
State basketball.
The shouts to Pat Chambers with the big upset win over USC at Florida Gulf Coast.
Yes, indeed. Not a bad way to start that season either. But I think that this is going to be a fun team. Little uncomfortable for old school guys like me relying on the three that heavily, because there will be nights.
Oh, they're gonna be.
It is not
set a
falling.
Program record last night, and we might set a program record for missed 3-pointers before the season's over.
But that being said, I think they do. This team hustles. I think they do enough of the fundamentals and defense right, that even on the nights where the three is off, it's not like, well, I don't think it's necessarily going to be you live and die by the three here. Right? The three, when it's falling, obviously helps tremendously. Yeah. And I think this team is going to be a little three-centric offensively. But I think it's designed to be that way, and I think that's okay. But I don't think it's a situation where, unlike in some years past, if you're not hot offensively and you're not having one of those great nights, forget about it, especially against good teams. I think this team can still hang in there. And the other thing with the 3-point shooting is I think this team believes in itself enough. Like you can be struggling for 30 minutes of a game, and then you just keep chucking it, and man, you get hot down the stretch, and you
fire away
the win. So I, we'll see. I think it's just going to be a fun team to watch. I don't know exactly where it's going to finish in the Big Ten, but this feels like a team that can legitimately contend night in and night out, and win more often than not, even in those big situations.
Well,
we'll see whether that plays out.
One thing that struck me last year and seemed to continue over into what we've heard about the team in the run-up to the season and saw last night that I loved about Pat Chambers' teams is that almost without exception, they would consistently play hard throughout a game and throughout a season defensively. They were always a tough out.
Yep.
And that's why you heard coaches like Tom Izzo say that they hated bringing their teams to Penn State, because they knew if they had an off night, they were going to pay. I mean, look, most coaches understood that there was a talent gap that over the course of 40 minutes, they could leverage to get a W against Penn State, but nothing was going to be given easily. And so if through the transfer portal and through recruiting, and you saw him pull in Penn State's highest ranked class last year and doing, pretty well so far again this year, if Micah can close that talent gap and also seems to be a pretty damn good X's and O's guy, then, you got to be careful. You're going to get licked type mentality is going to become something even scarier to opposing teams in the conference. And because the conference is so deep, and we were talking about earlier in the show, the respect and the benefit of the doubt that the SEC gets in football, well, the Big Ten still gets that in basketball. You don't have to be in the top 5 or 6 of the conference to be in the conversation for an invitation to the big dance. And I think that's very achievable with the direction that the program's going right now.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's as ridiculous as it may sound. I mean, to me, it's an expectation this year. I mean, I really do. I expect this team.
I'm not there. I am not there.
I am. I do.
God bless you.
I think it'd be a disappointment if this team does not get there with the talent that they have and with what they were able to lay as a foundation last year. To me, that's a. I think it's a reasonable expectation, not just a hope.
I love the stated goal of a double bye in the Big Ten tournament, which was in play until late in the season last year.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, you look at that and you say, okay, achievable incremental progress. And if you're one of those double bye teams, I mean, you're feeling pretty good about your tournament chances before you even go to Indy. Right. Yep. And it's still in Indianapolis, right? Or is it in Chicago? I can't remember. Wherever it is, the Big Ten basketball tournament. In the years in which Penn State has been a bubble team, which have not been many, but when they've come around, you've always needed to do something in the conference tournament in order to lock up your position. So to just be, for the first time since coronavirus, a team that doesn't have to worry about what happens in the Big Ten tournament, at the bare minimum, that invitation is coming. That would be, that would be progress. And I agree with you. I don't know if I think it's an expectation, but I think it's realistically achievable. You are not like pie in the sky dreamer if you think Penn State can do that this year.
And to that end, Penn State has had pretty good success in fall sports over the last decade or so.
Sure.
The winter sports, wrestling has been pretty successful.
With one notable exception.
But but not overall. Men's gymnastics has been very solid. But I think I think the fall sports has gone back up another notch this year with both the soccer programs. Field hockey is right there right now on the national scene.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm not going to say that Pat Kraft, with his few months on the job, single-handedly has Penn State elevated to championship status across the board. But I do think there is something to the approach he is taking and the expectations that he has internally for all of the athletic programs and for the athletic department, and his willingness to work with the coaches and with the student athletes to, hey, let's, what do we need to do to get as much success here as we can?
Can I just share with you real quickly
Yeah.
a little anecdote about Pat Kraft? Do you know, this is via my co-host, Kevin Horn. Do you know Nick's English Hut in Bloomington? It's like their signature college bar. It's kind of like what the Rathskeller was at Penn State.
Okay.
That's Nick's English Hut in Bloomington.
I may have been in there and just didn't realize.
Apparently, Pat's got his jersey framed and hanging in that bar, and it has been there. Kev goes to every road game. So he's been going to Nick's for years. And so he was telling me that jersey's been there as long as he's been going. So that guy was apparently such a legend as a walk-on linebacker at IU that his jersey got hung up in, it's mostly a lot of basketball stuff, right? But his football jersey is up in the college bar, the signature bar of Bloomington. So there is just something about the guy.
Yeah. I've, when he was here for our show, that's the only time I've talked to him in person. And there is just there's a genuine enthusiasm and, you can feed off the energy level that he brings and the passion that he has to get there. And but you look at the fall sports, and again, I think largely they've been successful, but football, if it can close out these final 3 games, you're likely looking at a top 10 if it wins its bowl game,
win your bowl game, you're a top 10 team.
Program. You're looking at national title contenders in 3 of the other fall sports for sure. And then, again, you look at these winter sports teams now. Hockey is right there. You just beat number 1 and then lost in overtime, and we'll see what happens on the road this weekend. But, if Penn State can earn a split at Minnesota,
oh boy.
You're talking about a team then that I think is
put them in the conversation with the best in the country.
Legitimate national title contender. I think men's basketball, whether or not it's an expectation, it's certainly a distinct possibility that you could be looking at an NCAA tournament team there. I think women's basketball could be, if some things come together, I think that team, I think this will undoubtedly be the best team that Carolyn Krieger's put together. But I think this is a team that has a chance to get into the big dance as well. Again, jury's a little bit out on that till we see them get through some games here. But I think that's a possibility. Wrestling, I think, is in for a very tough year. But somewhere down the road, they could be a contender again.
Yeah.
And listen, and I think when you look, I had a chance to do the PA for a couple of the softball games in the fall. Softball and baseball are both going to be very good, I think, in the upcoming year. The lacrosse teams have established themselves as perennial. It's just across the board. I think women's gymnastics has a chance to be pretty good. I don't know about contending for a Big Ten title, but pretty good this year. Men's gymnastics will be good. Men's volleyball's having one of its better seasons in a while. So I think across the board, there should be a lot of good feeling within the Penn State fan base about the overall direction of the athletic program, and I think that is going to continue for the foreseeable future. And just a couple other things before we wrap up shop. I honestly thought I was misreading something when I saw Jeff Saturday named as the I really did. I'm like, wait, that looked like, because I was one of those things, I saw it on the ticker, and I was kind of paying attention to whatever was on the screen. I'm like, wait a second, that looked like it said Jeff Saturday as head coach. I wonder if somebody's probably going to get chewed out because I'm like, I don't know if is he going to be the broadcaster, or I was genuinely trying to figure it out, and I started Googling, and I'm like, wait a second, this is what they're doing.
They did it.
And
that's happening.
Yeah, it just is. I will say it seems like it's out of left field, but I will say that guy is very smart, very likable. And again, I have no idea how this is going to turn out without any college or professional coaching experience. This seems like a bizarre hire.
I love outside the box thinking.
I do too.
But like the Colts are so bad that the guy is just being set up for failure. Even if the concept of throwing out the old playbook about who can and should be an NFL head coach has merit, applying that logic to this situation is just going to, no one's ever going to do it after this, because I don't see any way that this doesn't blow up in their faces, mostly because the team stinks.
Well, but here's the other part of it is not that it would make a ton more sense, but if it was in the offseason, it's like, okay, well, Jeff Saturday can get, he's certainly well connected, right? And it's like, okay, he can pick guys and be humble and say, listen, I'm the head coach. That's what they wanted me to do. But I realize you have, and he, I'm sure, is doing that in the locker room with the guys that are there. But I'm saying he can pick the guys that he has trust and faith in. Like, you're throwing him into a situation. And I give him credit. We were talking about, well, if Penn State asked me to be a head coach and they're going to offer me $6 million a year or whatever, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Absolutely.
I know I'm going to fail. Because I don't
get that buyout. Get your agent to jack that buyout
up.
The
ball. Get downfield. And I would do my best. But you're being thrown into a situation where everybody in that locker room knows you have no coaching experience.
Yes.
And even and I'm not saying he may very well gain the respect of the guys, but I'm just talking organizationally to try to jump in during a season that obviously is not going well, or you wouldn't be jumping in, and to do it with guys that you've had no input in any way, shape, or form with anybody in the organization. Like, that just seems, again, if you wanted Jeff Saturday in there and outside the box thinking, I call him up and say, hey, we're going to go with the offensive or defensive coordinator, but I want you to be on standby if you can come in and get to know these guys a little bit, but I want you to be our head coach. Like, that at least would make some sense to me. I just don't understand. I just genuinely don't understand how you expect somebody to go from analyzing games in a TV production studio to being the head coach during the season. Like, it
wild.
Really does not make any sense to me.
It's a very outlandish situation. Like, as you said, I was kind of in the same boat where I wasn't sure if I was reading the tweet properly. Like, I thought, this is one of these, like, okay, this is like Barry M trying to sucker me in here. Like, I'm not going to fall for this, but no, it was because you have to do that on the internet now. If you see a news story, you have to triple check it, like find 3 different sources. And I did that with the Jeff Saturday thing, and I couldn't believe it. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
We'll talk a little bit more about the Maryland game on Thursday. Also, preview, and for those of you playing the drinking game at home, we'll preview Penn State wrestling and Cale Sanderson's team on Thursday as Penn State opens.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious to
hear
your take on some of the announcements from Media Day. There was some newsworthy stuff there for sure.
No doubt. So we'll talk about that and much more on Thursday. And dear Goon, get well. Until Thursday, be good and be safe.
Make more good in the all-new Sportage X Pro. Kia, movement that inspires.
Quaker Steak and Lube is throwing open the garage doors and setting up the umbrellas. It's patio season. Come enjoy great food, drinks, and fun in the sun. There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube, but we're really amping up our event calendars for our favorite time of year. Visit thelube.com to find out what's happening at your local Lube this season. Lunch, happy hour, dinner, or late night, indoors or outside, at Quaker Steak and Lube, you'll always find big flavors, friendly faces, and lots of fun.
New Trail Brewing Company proudly crafts their beers right here in central Pennsylvania. Brewed with only the best possible ingredients, New Trail produces a variety of year-round brands as well as weekly experimental recipes. New Trail Broken Heels is Pennsylvania's favorite local hazy IPA. This beer is smooth and full-bodied. Hand-selected Citra hops lead to notes of bright clementine and juicy ruby red grapefruit. Broken Heels is perfect for a pregame tailgate all the way through the victory celebration.
What's the best mid-size pickup? Tacoma. What's the #1 mid-size truck in resale value? Tacoma. Want to get great gas mileage, 4 doors, and 4-wheel drive? Tacoma. Sioka Toyota of Williamsport has over 25 available right now. You can lease a brand new, never-driven Toyota Tacoma for just $379 a month. That's 30 months, $3,000 cash or trade, 10,000 miles a year. This is while supplies last.